Thank you, Dean Shields, and thank you all for coming today, and to faculty and staff colleagues, thank you also for making this a special part of your day. You know, the whole notion of reflecting as whole persons was driven home to me as I flew here from Durham, North Carolina. I was sitting next to, in Southwest, you scramble for seats, and I wanted to get off right away, so I sat between two gentlemen, and it was a pretty quiet hour-and-a-half flight. But then the fellow next to me asked me where I was going and what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm coming from Duke Divinity School in Durham, North Carolina. I happen to be a minister, and I'm going to be able to talk about living a reflective life with a group of students at Vanderbilt's Peabody College, and some other schools, professional education schools, will be invited to attend. He said, a reflective life. He said, let me tell you about my life. And he talked about how, and this fellow commutes all over the country for his work, but he talked about a time when his life was ready to crash, his marriage was ready to crash, and how he took a sabbatical. For him, a sabbatical was finding 1 week to go out into the camping in the deserts of Southern California. And he had to just sort out some things. And it was as though he was reading my script. He said, I had to sort out what my core values were, what was primary and what was really secondary. And I figured out that my wife and my family and the life that revolved around that was more life-giving, more important to me than my business obligations. And I sort of needed to reframe everything. I asked my firm to send me to a therapist, which they did, and he went through an entire process of sorting all this out. And he himself testified that by becoming a more reflective person about his own life, understanding his own motivations and what he really valued, he was in so much a better place as far as his life was concerned. Now, in our short time today, what I really want to do is take you through a couple of ways of doing reflection, but I want to just convince you, most of all, that it's worth it, that it is just plain worth it to reflecting on your own life and experience. And I want to, most of us, I think, had an apple in our lunchbox, and I want to do something here with this apple. You can take any apple, and I'm not sure what kind this is, but let's say it's a Honeycrisp, my favorite, and within every apple, there are 5 stars, or 5 lobes that make a star. Inside each one of them, there's a seed. This is a Honeycrisp, if we planted those seeds, what kind of apples are we going to get? Every seed will produce a different kind of apple, not one of them a Honeycrisp. It's true. Michael Pollan, Botany of Desire. Read the book. It's great. The point being that regardless of where you come from, your biology is not your destiny. The other formational experiences that you've had in life is not your destiny. By living a reflective life, you can blossom into the fruitful, unique person that you really are. And I mean that sincerely. There is something very special about you that is just waiting, and hopefully Peabody will be one of those places that nurtures that, and it really comes to bear fruit here. Now, I want to engage you in reflection right away, so you can begin to see the value of this. And if you can take this sheet that's in front of you and turn to the one that has more words on it. Most of us run pretty hard. Most of us do not have time, it seems, particularly in a technological age, and I have my iPhone in my briefcase so it doesn't buzz in my pocket, so that we're always connected, we're always moving, always looking, engaged, but not necessarily engaged with our own story very well, because we don't take the time for personal reflection. In this little model, which I attribute to a lot of folks who practice lives of self-reflection at the bottom there, is a simple way to start. And in our shop, where I direct a field education program, so if you think of internships that are supervised, that would be roughly equivalent. I invite our students to use a model very similar to this for their first 3 weeks and keep a journal. And the only thing I'm asking of them is this. What if you took 5 minutes at the end of your day just to take into account some of the strongest feelings that you had? And I'm just going to ask you to do number one, step one here. And there are the two categories that are indicated here. First of all, where did I experience connection? And in Divinity School, it's perfectly all right for us to talk this way. What connected us with God, others, and ourselves today? And where did disconnection happen? What disconnected us today? We're not going to worry about the disconnection, but we are going to practice step one right now. So, asking God to bring to our awareness the moment today. And you've only had half a day. The moment today, this half day, for which you are most grateful. Now here's some diagnostic questions in case you don't know how to figure that out. If you could relive one moment that you've had so far in this half day, what would it be? When were you most able to give and receive love today? Ask yourself, what was done or said in that moment that made it so good that you'd want to relive it? And just breathe in the gratitude that you felt at that moment and receive life from that. So I want you to take just a moment to identify that grateful moment. And at the very bottom here it says, step 3, give thanks, consider sharing one thing for which you are grateful with a friend. So I would like you to share that grateful moment with your table. So we'll take just a few minutes for that. Okay, we'll pretend we're at camp, and at camp when everyone's done, they either put their head down. I won't ask you to put your head down. You're just going to raise your hand if your table's done. Yeah. Okay, terrific. Well, I hope that brief exercise encouraged you to think that, to pause each day and express gratitude is a good thing. It's also a good thing to pause and acknowledge the pain and suffering that we live with. And the exercise has a way of acknowledging that and releasing that. And this too, as you experience it today, is best done as something to be shared. And so I encourage you to find ways to take time to reflect in that brief way each day, but also to share it with others. In and of itself, it can be a transformational experience. But I want to talk about another method. But first of all, I still think I have to convince you that it's worthwhile to do reflection on your own experience. And I want to say that it's important because you're a book. You're a text. Let's work with that metaphor. In fact, you're one of the greatest novels currently being written. You're a text that's unfolding, and you are worth reading. Okay? You're a great story. You deserve to be read. And you don't have to take my word for it. And since we're interdisciplinary here today, I can quote Augustine. Augustine said, "We wonder at the height of the mountains, at the size of the crashing waves, at the rivers running their courses to the sea, the circular motion of the stars, and we pass by each other without wonder." The person next to you is one of the greatest texts unfolding. They deserve to be read. You deserve to be read. In fact, you owe it to yourself to read your life. And some of this is simply because you're in the middle of the story, because it is unfolding. And again, that means that there are things that in our story call forth praise and celebration and joy, but other things that call forth lament and sorrow. And any book of any length has to deal with both of those. Even if we were reading Harry Potter all the way through, books 1 through 7, it's a roller coaster of emotional experiences. But that's our life too. I mean, we have both sides of the coin in experience. But here's why you want to reflect on that experience and read the text of your life. Because you want to participate in it more meaningfully. And in fact, by participating in it more meaningfully and reflecting on that, you can even shape its outcome, the outcome of the story. So there are many ways to do theological reflection, or reflection in general, and self-reflection. But regardless of which method, they share similar goals. Number one, that they should equip you as a reflector to listen more attentively to your own life, your own text. And secondly, each asserts that living a reflective life means that you'll be able to align your own life, your own activity, more closely with your core values, with compelling theory, whatever that is that you've bought into, and how you are sort of hardwired to be. Have you discovered that about yourself? That there are some things you just simply must do? There are themes that you simply have to engage? When your core values and this compelling theory and who you are hardwired to be, when they come together, you can even discover your life's calling. That's a life of integrity. It's a life of authenticity. Okay, but how do I decide what to read in my life? There's a lot to choose from. Does watching Love It or List It make it, or watching Nashville? Well, that's a good question, and those probably do not. But there are lots of other great things in your life that merit reading. And you can see in the graphic on the other side that I'm inviting you to consider this conversation between, I've already named it, your experience, your core values, or your core, who you are, and some compelling theory. Now, at the Divinity School, we would probably say, in terms of core value, that we live out of a great tradition. And there are men and women down the millennia who have thought hard about how to talk about and live the faith. And they have left a legacy, a tradition for us in theology and hymns and liturgies and confessions and all kinds of wonderful things that are part of our core. And in theory, those are reflected on Scripture. And so for us, that's probably how we would talk about it. We're going to talk about other theories in just a minute. So I'm suggesting that one way to experience transformation is a conversation between those three. Let me give you an example. How many of you have seen the movie The Butler? Okay. If you have not seen it, you need to see it, not only because it's a great cultural history, but Oprah's in it. Okay, we'll go on. The Butler is the story of a man, an African-American man named Cecil, and his family. They have escaped from a brutal past in the South and found their way to Washington, D.C. Now, through hard work, experience, excellence, and a lot of determination, Cecil has become a butler at the White House. And he starts back in the 50s, and this story ends up in the 90s. There's an amazing sequence about halfway through the movie. Cecil is going to be serving at a very confidential, high-level meeting between the president and another dignitary. And the White House Chief of Staff takes Cecil aside and is going to instruct him on how he should behave or how he should act when he's serving. But Cecil interrupts him and instructs him. And he says, I know, I'm to be in the room, but not seen. I'm to be in the room. Can you imagine this? saying this of yourself, I'm to be in the room, but not seen. Okay. In a subsequent scene, very soon after, the butler and his wife are invited to a state dinner by the Reagans. And all of a sudden, what should be the highlight of his career, he and his wife sitting at table with heads of state, the president and his wife are there. Instead of serving, he is being served. But no one is actually engaging Cecil and his wife, and suddenly it hits him. I am in the room, but not being seen. This deeply disturbs and troubles Cecil. And he has to wrestle with his own feelings about this experience that he's had. Why is this so confusing? Why is this so troubling? In this confusion, or this wanting to understand his experience, he even empowers himself to read his son's social and political theory texts, a son with whom he has been alienated because of the theories in the Black Power movement, not the violence side, but the justice pursuit side that his son is brought into. He feels like it's too radical. But he starts reading the texts. And you witness on the screen a transformation. Cecil suddenly realizes, by exploring his experience, that his core values of hard work, the dignity of work, and the theory that, if you keep your head down and you fly under the radar screen, don't draw too much attention to yourself, it's going to be okay, didn't work. It doesn't work. Because his rights and the rights of other black staff at the White House are being trampled on. And so he integrates what he is learning from this powerful theory about the pursuit of justice with these core values of excellence and determination and hard work and this experience that he's had, and he confronts the White House Chief of Staff and demands that the wages of black staff and white staff be equal. He has to actually do this repeatedly. So this core value of determination serves Cecil well. And ultimately, through his transformation, justice is served. The wages are equal. But even more powerful in the story is that he and his son, who have been estranged, are reconciled. And it is a powerful moment. That's what struggling with and taking time for self-reflection around stuff that really stirs you up. And you, as professional persons, are going to be in environments where you're going to have strong feelings. You're going to bump into the kinds of things that Cecil did. And you want to sit with those, wrestle with those, with your core values, with the compelling theories that guide your professional practice, and find out where is the integrity in this. So what to choose? Like Cecil, start with experience. What is that that's just stirring you up? Let that energy carry you into that conversation and see what transformation can take place. I want to come back to you and your own experience again in just a moment, but I want to give you another example. This is an ancient story with contemporary parallels. It's a story from the New Testament of the Bible. It's from the book of Acts. Peter is one of the early leaders in the church. Okay? The church is in Israel at this time in its history, for those of you that aren't familiar with church. And it has grown out of the Jewish people, the fulfillment of what many people feel are expectations for a Savior. Okay. Peter has followed Jesus, and he is a faithful Jew. And as the church keeps expanding its reach, Peter has a vision in the midst of this experience. in the history of the church. It's a vision of this strange sheet coming down from heaven. And in it are filled with birds and animals and reptiles. And there's a voice from heaven that says, "Peter, get up, kill and eat." And Peter is absolutely disgusted. I mean, he is a faithful Jew. He has kept strict dietary laws, and he cannot imagine himself violating those and eating what appears in that sheet. But a voice is heard a second time. What God has made clean, do not call unclean. 3 times this happens. And as the book of Acts records it, Peter is dismayed and confused. Everything in Peter's own formational experience as a child of Abraham and Sarah, this covenant community, has left him to feel that he is part of a special community and that those rules are inviolable. They need to be followed. This would violate his core values to eat what he saw in that sheet. The direction of his life's compass was challenged by this. But right after that experience, this vision, something more confusing happens. 3 emissaries come from a Roman centurion, and they are Gentiles. Now, this is the contemporary parallel. So Gentile, back in that text, meant the other, the unclean, the untouchable, the outsider. You think of our contemporary culture. Who are the outsiders, the unclean, the untouchable? These Gentiles have come with a message. Peter is meant to accompany them and speak to this Roman centurion. But it's at the end of the day, Peter practices ancient Near Eastern hospitality, invites them in, they stay overnight, and the next day they walk 35 miles from one town to where this Roman centurion is. And he has to actually be in close proximity to these people who are unclean, the other, the untouchables. And all the while he is wrestling with this experience, being with them and in this strange vision that he's had. Peter comes to the house, the Roman centurion invites them in, and it's not just the centurion. All of his friends are there, and they're waiting to hear a word from Peter. What will Peter say? He knows he's not supposed to be there, not with these kinds of people. But Peter has thought, he's reflected long and hard on that experience that he had with the vision, these people that he's been hanging out with. The vision told him to be free, to enjoy the other. Suddenly it becomes clear to Peter that the animals in this vision don't represent dietary laws strictly, but rather a message about God's generous love for all people. So he says to them all, "You know that normally I wouldn't even be here to associate with you, but God is beginning to teach me that God does not show partiality. But every nation, in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him." So Peter, by reflecting on this confusing experience, including hanging out with the other, challenged his core values. And he has to shift from labels that exclude, that is, us four and no more in this little covenant community, to reading sort of the rest of the text, God's promises that through Abraham and Sarah, all the nations would be blessed. And the theory that once said, love your neighbor as yourself, meaning within that covenant community, to the very next texts that say, love the foreigner. And I love how some translations do it today, love the immigrant. Remember, God says to the Israelites, you were once a foreigner. You were once an immigrant. So Peter has had to name the prejudice. He's had to realign his compass in his life's own direction, and he's a changed person. Now, I'd like to walk through an experience with you on this little diagram. First of all, I have to know, how many of you are new to Vanderbilt this semester? Okay. And how many of you are new to even to Nashville? Okay. So some of you. The others of you, I want you to go back to your first days here at Vanderbilt and think about that. How did you feel in those first days entering this expansive place? Lots of moving parts, lots of people, lots of offerings. Were you excited, eager, anxious? Did you feel a little displaced as a person? Did you ask yourself, what am I doing here? Keep how you felt in that transition into Vanderbilt in your mind. Now, I know that we have people from different professional schools here, but I was going to guess that most would be educators. And so I'm going to hopefully draw on a theoretical structure that all of you have shared in your educational background from a general psych class or intro to psych class. That's Erickson, Psychosocial Development Theory. So you had this experience, whatever that was, when you entered the Vanderbilt experience. Erickson says, and he has its stages and ages kind of thing, you move through this developmental theory, but basically it's that you have things reflected back to you in your social environment, and it shapes your identity. And it begins with those youngest little ones who have to decide, is this a trustful environment? Trust versus mistrust? And if it's a trustworthy environment, can I take initiative and step out and do some things? Or will I be shamed or feel guilty because I'm disciplined because I did the wrong thing? And if I navigate all that, my own identity will begin to emerge as I keep receiving this feedback in this social environment. And I'll become less confused about who I am and more solid in my own personal identity. So when you first came to Vanderbilt and you had this experience, in fact, I think any time one of us undergoes any kind of radical change, whether that's new school, new community, new relationship, new job, new colleagues, I think you sort of renegotiate these. And you sort of decide, is this person trustworthy? Is this environment trustworthy? Are my colleagues, trustworthy? And since you came to a fantastic place and you were surrounded by great people, you said, of course Vanderbilt's a trustworthy environment. This is a place where people flourish. I'm loving this. And so you took initiative. And you stepped out and advanced your own person, shared more of your own self with others, your own story. You engaged others. You even maybe tried on some things that you had never even tried before. And you kept growing. And things were reflected back to you that made you feel really good. And all of a sudden you discovered, like Dean Shields, that you wear a lot of black and gold. And you're saying, my identity is secure. I am a Commodore. And I'm loving it here at Vanderbilt. And you've moved through the stages. Well, that's what we do, is we have this conversation between experience and these deep feelings that we have, and our core values and our theory. And we come to find out who we are in this world, and what maybe even our vocation is. And pretty soon that confirmation and clarity about direction just is so reassuring to us that we can, with confidence, keep moving forward. There's a congruence in our life that is reassuring and satisfying. One last example. Before this exchange, this transcript that was recorded, not many people knew who Antoinette Tuff was. A bookkeeper at a little school in Decatur, Georgia. A gunman came onto the school grounds and started firing rounds. And Antoinette called the 911 operator. And this is from the transcript. He is shooting, and she's got the operator on the phone, and she considers running, escaping. But she tells the operator, no, he's coming. He's going to see me running. He's coming back inside the building. But instead of hiding, Antoinette Tuff engages him. And she sees that he's a disturbed individual. And so she says, don't feel bad, baby. My husband just left me after 33 years. I've got a son that's multiple disabled. It's all going to be okay. She asks him his name, and he says, Michael Hill. And she responds, my grandmother was a Hill. And he opens up more to her and shares with her that he's having these suicidal feelings. And she says, no, you don't want that. You're going to be okay. I thought the same thing. You know, I tried to commit suicide last year after my husband left me. But look at me now. I'm still working. Everything's okay. He expressed his concern that if he actually gave up and went outside, the police would shoot him. She offered to walk outside with him and says, you don't have to die today. Toward the end of the conversation, she says, it's going to be all right, sweetie. I just want you to know that I love you. Okay? I'm proud of you. Life will bring about turns, but we can learn from it. That's a good thing. After his surrender, she tells the dispatcher, let me tell you something, baby. I've never been so scared in all my life. My pastor was teaching us about anchoring. And so I started praying. Antoinette Tuff is an amazing person. The newscasters and the analysts pored over this transcript, the whole thing, and marveled at her calm and courage, her empathy and vulnerability, her ability to connect with Michael Hill as a human being. And that's what ultimately secured his trust and his surrender. She has since had plenty of time to reflect on her experience in this incredible encounter. And there's plenty of evidence from those interviews, from the full transcript itself, that Antoinette Tuff is a reflective person, integrating theory and practice, her core values, into her life. And given what others and Antoinette have said, I think it's safe to say that she responded with integrity and authenticity through her own life story reflected on. Her core values aligned with her theory, faith, hope, and love, and numbers of lives were saved. So I've been operating with some assumptions. One is that you know your core values. You need, I don't need to scold you like a parent. It would be good if you took some time in your reflection process to say, you know, what really is my core? What do I live out of? What motivates me at the very center of my life? What are the compelling theories that drive you? Are they justice theories? Are they, I mean, you fill in the blank. So I can begin to have this conversation. Because you're a text. Your life's an open book for others to read and reflect back to you, and I hope that you will do this in community, and I hope that you'll take time to read it, because yours is a great book. Thank you. Sure. In fact, that was one of those transformational moments where I had to reflect on an experience when a set of parents approached me at the back of church, which is where a lot of earnest conversations happen, and they said to me, our son Rob wants to live independently, and we don't know where he's going to live. Rob was 24 years old, Down syndrome, talented individual, but where do you live? Where is that safe, affordable, community-oriented life space for folks? Parents have heard lots of stories about group homes where there are bad experiences. They don't hear enough really great experiences. And I just say it's Providence that 2 weeks before then, I was a faculty member and dean of students. I had started thinking about building a new housing facility for our seminary because our numbers had grown and we needed some additional housing. And I'd also been reading, again, this is where theory comes in. You want to be reading good theory always. Asset-based community learning, or community development, rather. And one of the things that they posit in asset-based community development is needs produce assets. We had a need, they had a need, and I just responded very naively and just said, well, let's put your need and our need together and see what happens. And then the learning really began. Because I asked them again naively, could you find 4 other parents whose life situation is similar, and let's start meeting? Well, you have to know that the disability community is all connected. And so they could have found 50 other families. But they did find 4 others that we started meeting. And I started learning from them about what would make housing good for them. I read a commission study on housing for folks with disabilities and what made that work. And we were very fortunate that all of those pieces seemed to fit together where we could actually build a housing situation or a facility. So we purpose-built a brand new apartment building with 6 apartments in it, room for 24 total. So the ratio was 3 students to 1 person with a cognitive challenge. Private bed and bath in one in their room, the friend's room, and then the 3 students' rooms who shared a bath and a half. And of course, just like any other a large 4-bedroom apartment, it opened up on the kitchen, dining area, and living room. And we did our best to orient people what this experience might like, held our breath, and people moved in. And the first one has been going for 8 years now, and it's just an amazing experience. One of the reflections that 3 students living together with Zach is part of a book that one of the mothers wrote and has been published, in which Zach cooks for them every Thursday night. And for them, it's sort of become a reflection of a sacramental meal. And it's a beautiful thing that they've experienced. So in Durham, I started talking with some families in Durham because of a friend that I had at Duke. And then lo and behold, Duke invited me to come down and work there at the Divinity School. And so then all of a sudden I was engaged again with a set of parents in a community and learning very quickly, what that community was about. And we formed in this case, some partnerships with nonprofits, and we're able to take 2 facilities that were adjacent to one another, 2 duplexes, repurpose them for friendship houses, stripped to the walls, repurpose built as friendship houses. And our students and the friends moved in August. And the reflections are already amazing about what people are experiencing and growing. And from the outside, people look at it and I remember the first one, and their first response was, isn't it so wonderful that the seminary is making room for people with disabilities? And we had to sort of tell them, no, turn it on its head, because we're so grateful we've been able to set up a situation in which we can learn from these gifted people. Because frankly, as seminaries, we weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing as training leaders to go out in their communities and not serve about 40 million Americans who live with a disability. We were not preparing either by coursework or by experience. And so now once you've got this embedded experience, it's forced faculty to start thinking about how does that connect with some of our courses, and so it ends up transforming an institution. Yeah. By virtue of attending Vanderbilt University, you will be perceived as leaders. The positions you go to, you will be leaders. Leadership can be parsed out in different ways. Connected leadership, collaborative leadership, and that's the kind of leadership that I would challenge you to do. And that's a posture of humility, a disposition of the learner, the leader as a learner, which means that you'll always want to do things in collaboration with others. You'll want to engage multiple perspectives and reflect on those conversations because the outcome will be better. I have to tell you, when I first started this, one of the first people that I contacted was Elise McMillan at the Kennedy Center for Human Development. If I had not had a sounding, I was so unknowledgeable about what I was getting into. And I knew there was a place of expertise. And so, Elise McMillan was invaluable as a sounding board for me. So, wherever you go, it'll just be better. It's more fun to do it with others. It's hard for me to even imagine any initiatives that I would do now without reaching out to others and benefiting by reflecting on what they teach me. So again, you are gifted, you're talented, you're bright. You don't have to be threatened by other people's gifts. So reach out and benefit from their particular skill set. The theoretical framework that they come from. And believe that you can really receive and be open to benefit from all these. And it will just, the end product, or the end, whatever it is that you're pursuing, will just be richer and better for having engaged that. So, that's the way I would talk about it, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Matt, thank you very much. And I know that one of the things that I would just encourage you about is that Elise is in the Kennedy Center here, and that Matt's here, and Jaco, and there were some needs that we had in our professional schools. We need to provide more resources for students to come here and to make your time here more valuable, both financially, educationally, and your field experiences. And so part of the conversation is about these three schools working together in collaboration around the formation of a friendship house for our next step students on our campus. And so those conversations are going on, and I hope that there's going to be some fruits of that labor in the near future. We had a meeting at my house last night that Matt was at to talk about next steps. This is a series of meetings that we've been having collaboratively and using the model. I went and visited Matt at Duke 3 weeks ago to look at their friendship house and to share it with some folks here in the city. And so I think you'll be hearing more about this, and your participation and your ideas will certainly be welcomed as this gets more formed here in the university and out in the community. So you can look forward to that, and I hope that maybe a lunch like this on occasion becomes the norm for our three schools, and that we can have some time. And the next time, I'm going to insist that you not sit by school, but that you sit with each other. And I'm going to insist the next time. I didn't want to do it this time, but the next time we'll have all of you sitting together in interdisciplinary groups. And so I'm going to actually challenge some of the faculty that are here from both schools. Let's get together and let's find another way to bring our groups back together for lunch and for another conversation. So I hope you all enjoyed this day and this luncheon. We're really glad to have you here, and we hope it's the start of some new things to come for all of our schools. Thank you.